In our headlines on this Thursday, December 18th, here in South Korea, U.S. President Donald Trump addresses his nation in an end-of-year speech on Wednesday local time, claiming gains on the border and economic fronts. And here on the local front, financial authorities are sounding the alarm of the prolonged state of the weak South Korean currency against the U.S. dollar. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate also endorses a 2026 defense bill that restricts U.S. military retreat from its bases overseas, including here in South Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump says the former Biden administration is to blame for America's current economic woes and that his administration has been fixing the failings. Our Park Onu covers his remarks.
Once dead, America is again one of the hottest countries in the world. That's how Trump described the U.S. during his roughly 20-minute national address from the White House on Wednesday night. He opened by criticizing former President Joe Biden while praising what he called the achievements of his own administration.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans.
Trump claimed prices are now falling, and he's bringing them down very fast, specifically citing a Thanksgiving turkey that he said was 33% cheaper than last year. He also touted his achievements, speaking about the large investment he secured, crediting his tariff policies.
I've secured a record-breaking $18 trillion of investment into the United States, which means jobs, wage increases, growth, factory openings, and far greater national security. Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore.
Trump added that wages are rising much faster than inflation and said more families would feel the economic benefits of upcoming policies, including major tax cuts. The U.S. president also announced what he called a warrior dividend, promising over $1,700 checks to U.S. service members before Christmas. He also hinted at an appointment for a new Federal Reserve chair who believes in low interest rates by a lot that's soon to be announced. However, recent polls paint a different picture. A Reuters and Ipsos poll released Tuesday showed that just 33% of U.S. adults approve of how Trump's handling the economy. In a separate poll by PBS News, NPR, and Marist released on Wednesday, Trump recorded his lowest ever economic approval ratings, including during his first term, with only 36% approval, as many cite concerns over the cost of living. With next year's midterm elections approaching, which are widely seen as a measure of public sentiment toward the Trump administration, eyes are on whether Wednesday's address will make the poll results rise again. Park Onu, Arirang News.
And Venezuela is accusing the Trump administration of seeking to appropriate its oil. The accusation follows the U.S. president's order of a complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers to and from the Latin American country. Our Ian Jin has the latest.
In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro said in a speech in Caracas on Wednesday that U.S. President Donald Trump's order for a total and complete blockade of sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving the country was a warmongering threat and a colonialist pretense. This was in response to the Trump administration's announcement of the blockade on Tuesday, along with its designation of Maduro's government as a foreign terrorist organization. Maduro also said that the real motive behind the continuing U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean was oil rather than combating drug trafficking, and that Trump had revealed his true motives towards the South American country to be regime change, which he said will never happen, adding that Venezuela will never be a colony of anything or anyone. In an immediate response to Trump's post on Tuesday, the Venezuelan government called his declaration a reckless and serious threat that violates international law, free trade, and freedom of navigation. Maduro stated that Venezuela will continue to trade oil. On Wednesday, Venezuela also requested that the United Nations Security Council meet to discuss the ongoing U.S. aggression. A UN diplomat has reportedly said that a meeting would likely be scheduled for next Tuesday. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posted on X that the U.S. military carried out a lethal strike on a vessel in the Eastern Pacific that was allegedly transiting along a known narco-trafficking route. Hegseth said the attack killed 4 males he described as narco-terrorists and that no U.S. military forces were harmed. 이은진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate has approved a defense bill for next year that effectively restricts U.S. military retreat from South Korea. This latest approval follows an early endorsement by the U.S. House of Representatives. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
The U.S. Senate on Wednesday passed the 2026 Fiscal Year National Defense Authorization Act, approving a defense budget of $901 billion, about $8 billion more than requested by the administration. The bill passed 77-20 and will take effect after President Donald Trump signs it. A key provision bars the use of defense funds to reduce U.S. troops in South Korea below the current level of 28,500 and reaffirms the U.S. nuclear umbrella commitment to Seoul. The funding restriction, which had been absent during the Biden administration, returns under Trump's second term. Analysts say it reflects congressional efforts to prevent potential troop reductions as the administration pushes for greater burden sharing among allies. The bill also restricts funding for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. South Korea Combined Forces Command to a South Korea-led command to prevent the transfer process from deviating from the agreed framework. The restriction can be lifted after 60 days if the defense secretary certifies the transfer aligns with U.S. national security interests and has been coordinated with allies. The Lee Jae-myung government aims to complete the transfer during its term, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has voiced support. The NDAA will cover the U.S. defense budget from October through next September. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And National Security Advisor Wee Sung-nak met U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright for talks on Wednesday. The meeting took place in Washington, D.C., and while details of their discussion have yet to be formally disclosed, sources believe their talks most likely centered on South Korea's plan for uranium enrichment and spent nuclear fuel reprocessing. This plan follows the Trump administration's earlier approval for South Korea's nuclear-powered submarine ambitions. Also addressing reporters upon arrival in the U.S. on Tuesday, we raised prospects of a separate agreement with the U.S. to address restrictions in their current existing, that is, nuclear cooperation pact. The U.S. State Department held separate talks with South Korea ahead of the pact's Silica Summit, a U.S.-led initiative aimed at building a resilient AI supply chain. U.S. Under-Secretary of State for Economic Affairs Jacob Hellberg said on Wednesday officials from Seoul and Washington met several times ahead of the multilateral summit to address energy matters. He declined to share details, but reaffirmed U.S. commitment to supporting South Korea's energy needs, including nuclear power as well as non-nuclear sources such as natural gas. The South Korean currency has been losing substantial ground against the US dollar, and its prolonged weakness is prompting much concern. Accordingly, the Abe administration is actively seeking countermeasures. Our Kim Do-yeon covers the latest efforts.
The South Korean won is struggling. On Thursday, the local currency closed around 1,478 won against the US dollar. The recent lack of any sustained improvement is raising alarms that this high exchange rate is becoming entrenched as a new normal. Looking at the quarterly averages, the structural rise is stark. After averaging 1,399 won to the dollar in the first quarter, the rate surged to 1,453 won in the second quarter. Although it returned to the 1,300 won range during the third quarter, the fourth quarter has seen a sharp rebound, with the average breaching the 1,475 won mark. The government response started coming last month, and in the past few days it has been making announcements on a daily basis. For the latest response measures, top financial authorities led by Deputy Prime Minister Koo Yoon-chul convened an emergency meeting on Thursday morning.
Present at the meeting were chiefs of the Financial Services Commission, the Financial Supervisory Service, and the Bank of Korea. Flagging the currency volatility as a major concern, they launched a 24-hour joint monitoring system to respond to any market jitters. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Economy and Finance unveiled a deregulation package, with their efforts now going beyond the government and reaching private institutions for support. The government will drastically raise a ceiling on forward exchange positions for foreign banks to 200% and allow exporters to take out foreign currency loans for operational funds, measures designed to open the floodgates for dollar inflows. In addition, Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bom summoned executives from 7 major conglomerates, including Samsung, SK, Hyundai Motor, for an emergency meeting. This move is interpreted as a direct request for global exporters to cooperate by releasing their dollar holdings into the market. This is because exporters are hesitant to exchange dollars they earn into Korean won due to the current market conditions. But experts note this move might not have the desired impact.
Even if these large companies release their dollars, individual or institutional investors are likely to buy them up immediately to invest in the U.S. So while there might be a short-term impact, it is not a sustainable solution.
Meanwhile, with the weakened won to the greenback, the Bank of Korea projects next year's inflation to be 2.1% if the current exchange rate level holds. But if the won weakens further, it says the nation can expect inflation up to the mid 2% range. 김도현, Arirang News.
In other news, Science Minister Bae Kyung-hun believes AI innovation can serve to strengthen South Korea's economic growth rate to the 3% range. Our Park Jun-han explains.
In a bold push to revitalize the nation's economy, South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT Bae Kyung-hun has announced plans to leverage artificial intelligence to address low growth and achieve a 3% potential growth rate. Speaking at a CEO breakfast forum hosted by the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Thursday, Minister Bae emphasized the role of AI in transforming key industries like manufacturing, defense, biotechnology, and culture. The host of Thursday's event, Choi Tae-won, who is also chairman of SK Group and the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, said that Korea's growth rate has fallen by about 1 percentage point a year since the 1990s, warning it could turn negative within 5 years unless a new national strategy is adopted to revive growth. On the same day, there was a science and technology-related ministers' meeting. Minister Bae outlined key initiatives, such as appropriately distributing NVIDIA's advanced GPUs promised to the South Korean government, developing a domestic neural processing unit, and developing a hyper-AI strategy called an AI Highway, which aims to enhance domestic network infrastructure and strengthen industrial AI competitiveness.
Starting next year, we must move decisively toward an AI transformation and deliver tangible results in science and technology innovation. Across all industries, from autos and shipbuilding to finance, AI and digital technologies are driving productivity and value creation. If government ministries work together, science and AI can power real economic growth.
As early as February next year, the government will distribute 10,000 of NVIDIA's high-performance GPUs to South Korean tech startups and researchers studying and training AI. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
South Korea's financial regulator has sounded the alarm over secondary damage from the massive leak of Coupang's user data. Our Cha Yoon-kyun covers the continued fallout of the latest government response.
The Financial Supervisory Service has raised its consumer alert level to warning, saying that secondary damage such as voice phishing and smishing related to the Coupang personal data leak has been confirmed. According to the FSS, scammers are posing as prosecutors, police, and government bodies and pretending to handle the response to the data leak before luring people to phishing sites. The FSS said in a recent report that consumers had already been defrauded out of 11 million won, or around $7,400 through these phishing scams. It stated if a court, prosecutors, or police, the postal service, and the link demand that you access a certain site or link or install an app on the pretext of returned registered court mail or case verification, it is 100% voice phishing. Meanwhile, the government announced on Thursday that it will establish an interagency task force to handle the Coupang data breach. The decision was made at a ministerial meeting on science and technology chaired by Science Minister Baek-yong-hun. The task force, led by the second vice minister of the Ministry of Science and ICT, Ryu Jae-myung, will include representatives from the Science Ministry as well as related bodies, such as the Personal Information Protection Committee, the Korea Communications Commission, and the Financial Services Commission. It will convene both regular and emergency meetings to exchange updates on ongoing police and government investigations and to explore measures to reinforce Coupang's responsibility in addressing the breach. Coupang has faced criticism for its lukewarm response to the breach and its uncooperative attitude toward Korean authorities. Harold Rogers, interim chief executive officer of Coupang, apologized for the breach during a parliamentary hearing Wednesday, but did not present detailed measures on customer compensation or data security. Angered by what they called Coupang's passive response, parliamentarians vowed tougher measures, including a national investigation. 차윤경, Arirang News.
Roughly 3 out of every 10 parents taking leave to care for their children last year were fathers. In fact, paternity leave applicants soared past 60,000 for the first time in 2024. Our Lee Soo-jin files this report.
South Korea saw a record number of parental leave takers in 2024, surpassing 206,000 for the first time since such data was first recorded in 2010. According to data released by the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Wednesday, the total number of people taking parental leave reached just over 206,000, up 4% from 2023. This rebound follows a slight dip in 2023 amid low birth rates and coincides with a modest increase in the fertility rate from 0.72 to 0.75, the first rise in 9 years. And a notable shift is emerging towards shared parenting. The number of fathers taking parental leave surged 18.3% to over 60,000 fathers, accounting for more than 29% of the total, the highest proportion ever. For the first time, more than 10% of fathers of newborns took parental leave, meaning roughly 1 in 10 eligible fathers of 2024 newborns used leave in the year their child was born. Overall parental leave usage for newborns last year hit a record 34.7%. However, over 60% of parental leave takers work at large companies with over 300 employees, where usage rates are higher. In small firms with fewer than 5 workers, only 41% of eligible mothers took leave, raising questions about why parents at smaller businesses often make less use of parental leave.
Small businesses are already short-staffed and often cannot find replacement workers. When employees take extended leave, employers still bear wage costs, adding financial pressure. While parental leave supports child-rearing, it also widens the gap between workplaces, and this issue deserves serious discussion.
The general trend of more fathers taking parental leave reflects the government's efforts to combat low birth rates by encouraging paternal involvement in childcare, marking progress toward more balanced family responsibilities. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. A Los Angeles court on Wednesday heard the first appearance of Nick Reiner, charged with murdering his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner. The 32-year-old, wearing a suicide prevention jacket, did not enter a plea. The judge postponed his arraignment until January 7th at his attorney's request, holding him without bail. Prosecutors charged Reiner with 2 counts of first-degree murder and added special circumstances of multiple murders and an allegation he used a knife. Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead from apparent stab wounds in their Los Angeles home, and police arrested Nick Reiner hours later nearby. In a statement, his siblings Jake and Romy said they are in, quote, unimaginable pain and asked for privacy and restraint. The UK government on Wednesday gave Roman Abramovich 90 days to transfer $3.3 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club to Ukrainian war victims or face court action. The funds remain frozen under UK sanctions. London says Abramovich agreed in 2022 to donate the money to Ukraine and warned that it won't allow these funds to sit unused while victims suffer. Researchers tracking wild polar bears in northern Canada have captured rare footage of a mother bear adopting a cub that is not her own. Scientists observed the 5-year-old bear during the annual migration along western Hudson Bay near Churchill, Manitoba, with 2 cubs, including one without a tag. Researchers say it's only the 13th known adoption case out of 4,600 bears studied over nearly 5 decades in the area. The cubs appear healthy and are expected to stay with the mother until they are about 2.5 years old. 주지현, Arirang News.
A brief cold snap hit most parts of the country this morning, with temperatures falling below freezing. With clear skies, temperatures rose quickly in the afternoon. Temperatures climbed up to 7 degrees Celsius in Seoul, 10 degrees in Changsu-gun County, and 9 degrees in Bonghagun County, leading to a huge daily temperature difference between morning and day. For the next few days, the weather will continue to be unusually mild for winter. Seoul's daytime temperature will reach 10 degrees tomorrow, and it will rise to 11 degrees on Saturday, which is about 7 degrees warmer than the seasonal average temperature. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 0 degrees, Chuncheon at -4 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 12 degrees in Daejeon, 13 degrees in Daegu. Right after nationwide rain on Saturday, temperatures will drop sharply. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. And as always, thank you for watching.